Hi, I'm Brent Stafford, and welcome to RegWatch by RegulatorWatch.com, the only platform dedicated to watching the watchers. The National Energy Board is facing unprecedented scrutiny and criticism about its role in Canada's energy economy. The NEB has come under fire over its mandate and review of oil pipeline projects such as Enbridge Northern Gateway, Energy East, and the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain pipeline expansion. Not all of the criticism has been fair or valid, but it's certainly been vocal.
They're on the ground.
Protect the people, not Kinder Morgan!
Last November, tensions exploded on Burnaby Mountain as climate activists showed up in force to protest Kinder Morgan's planned expansion of its Trans Mountain pipeline. The NEB is reviewing the company's application to twin its existing pipeline, which runs 1,100 kilometers from Edmonton to a terminal on Burnaby Mountain located in the heart of Metro Vancouver. The NEB had approved Kinder Morgan to drill a handful of holes to determine whether the geology would support an underground route through the mountain for the pipeline, which could potentially be better for both residents and the environment. As work began, climate protesters harassed Kinder Morgan contractors and clashed with police.
We believe in another way. We believe in a clean and just transition.
And the just transition called for is away from fossil fuels, meaning no expansion of infrastructure and a complete shutdown of the Alberta oil sands. Climate change is the #1 issue for protesters, and that's the challenge for the NEB, since addressing climate change is not in its mandate. Regulator Watch has begun its special coverage of the National Energy Board with a feature article examining claims against the NEB's review process and how emerging public sentiments have prompted this regulator to look for new ways to connect with Canadians. Joining us today from our downtown Vancouver studio is Scott Simpson, RegulatorWatch.com, senior writer and analyst. Scott, this is the first time our viewers have met you. Now, you've spent decades covering regulatory matters. Is that not correct?
Oh, that's right. I mean, I started the Vancouver Sun about 1981 and covered provincial regulations. In the last 10 years or so in the business department of the Sun, covering BC Utilities Commission, the Environmental Assessment Office, and of course the National Energy Board.
Yeah, about the NEB, Scott, what is its mandate?
Anything that crosses a border is regulated by the NEB. They have to make sure that Canadian interests are protected, that these natural resources, which are our heritage, are given full value. They have to make sure that any construction of a transmission line or a pipeline is done in a way that sort of respects public safety and the safety of the environment as well, not just in the short term either, over the long term.
Is the regulator's job primarily to protect economic value, or is it equally as much the environment?
Well, when the NEB looks at something, they look at a variety of different considerations. Like, for example, if you look at the Trans Mountain expansion project, they have about 12 different things that they're trying to look at. I would say a lot of them have to do with environment, with ensuring that the pipeline itself is going to be installed correctly, that all the checks and balances are in place to make sure that the environment is fixed up after the pipeline is set down.
What economic considerations does the NEB look for with a project like Kinder Morgan's?
Kinder Morgan has to demonstrate that this project is good for Canada, that it'll provide some value, not just in terms of the jobs that it's going to create, and it's going to create a lot of jobs, for example, but that it's going to lead to long-term benefits for Canada as we sort of we sell these important resources.
Scott, what are the protesters' criticisms then about the NEB and its process of pipeline review, specifically with Kinder Morgan?
Well, with Kinder Morgan project, Brent, and then with the Energy East project as well that we're going to see, climate change is a factor that people want talked about. They want to be able to visit that issue in any kind of a hearing that the NEB is holding about like a big oil transmission pipeline. It's not in the NEB's mandate, however, to take that into consideration. As a result, people feel like they're not really getting a voice on what they believe is the biggest issue now with respect to energy development in Canada, which is climate change.
So that's not the NEB's fault, is it?
No, I mean, they're regulated, their mandate is set down by the federal government. I don't know that anybody necessarily expected this issue to fall on any particular project. You know, in retrospect, in hindsight, Brent, it probably was inevitable that we would see these kinds of discussions. And certainly if you go through the NEB website, You'll see people in there among the interveners or commenting or writing letters to the NEB on the process so far, talking about or urging the NEB to take a closer look at climate effects of what's called the upstream portion of the entire enterprise, which is development of the oil sands to put the oil in the pipe that's going to be moved across British Columbia and Alberta, or in the case of Energy East, across eastern Canada.
Scott, you mentioned interveners. Now, there's a loud contingent upset in the case of the Kinder Morgan application with the decision to move from oral hearings to written questions.
The outcome of that is really that people feel that they're being denied a voice in the hearing itself. That's prompted a lot of concern, and that's prompted accusations that the National Energy Board and indeed the federal government are kind of stifling the ability of people to really get in there and ask the questions they think are important. If you actually look, though, at the filing that the NEB is maintaining, there's, oh gosh, 1,150 questions or something.
Finally, Scott, what's the NEB doing to address these complaints?
Well, their chair is on a cross-country tour right now, trying to, I guess, bring the public around to a better understanding of what the NEB's role actually is and what its responsibilities are.
Great interview. Make sure you read Scott's feature article on the NEB and pipeline protesters. Just head over to regulatorwatch.com. And if you want, you can deep dive into all the issues facing the National Energy Board. We've curated a full spectrum of coverage, which you can find on the NEB Watch page. And while there, also check out the access links, which take you directly to project applications and a ton of other resources at the NEB. Keep your eyes peeled for an upcoming episode of RegWatch when we'll talk with environmental activists and get their thoughts on the NEB process and climate change. Well, that's it for this edition of RegWatch. Before you head off, please like us on Facebook and don't forget to follow us on Twitter. For RegulatorWatch.com, I'm Brent Stafford.